What's this got to do with the SDGs? Well, it underlines the crucial importance of tackling climate change, of course. But I wanted to say what is different now to what I saw in 1984-85, and particularly in Ethiopia. And I suppose it's because, you know, it indicates to us that the SDGs, the MDGs, could be attained. The SDGs can be attained because we are looking at a very different world. From the famine of 1984-85, there's not serious conflict in Ethiopia. There's peace generally across the country. There's a unified state. There's leadership and commitment that has been shown in tackling the problems created by the El Nino. There's been economic development, which has meant that the country is able to put a huge amount of money, relatively speaking, into tackling the humanitarian crisis. The Ethiopian government has put $385 million of its own budget into this. Now, it's still not enough, but that is a substantial contribution from the government. So they've shown leadership, they've shown commitment, they've organised logistics, they've imported huge quantities, very, very efficient importation within the constraints of lack of ports and still poor infrastructure, but they've really made this kind of commitment. So in other words, economic development of a fairly standard classic kind is really important, and it's given the government the resources to be able to work. But most of all, probably, is that they have what's called a productive safety net programme, and it's basically a social protection baseline, a floor, which some 7 to 8 million people are able to draw on when there's a food crisis. And this is a standard regular thing where people are able to get a certain number of months' work, and therefore employment, therefore income, in exchange for improving the country, terracing, building roads, building reservoirs and so on. It's a great example. It's a fantastic thing. Every country should be putting this kind of thing into place. Not easy because it's not funded mostly by the Ethiopian government. It still relies upon donor funding, particularly USAID funding. However, the system is in place, and without it, we would be talking about 15 up to 20 million people being in food crisis this year, instead of just, at the moment, about 10 million. So there's huge things that have changed, and Ethiopia is a classic example. And the other one that I think is really very, very significant, and again, our personal memories, because when I was at school in the I won't tell you what, no, it was a long time ago, it was in the 1960s basically. I mean, I remember very vividly, we had this thing called General Studies, and I wrote an essay on Bangladesh, which I think was just either becoming or was about to become independent, just been through a terrible war. And Bangladesh at the time was written off by all commentators. They said Bangladesh is a hopeless basket case, it will never succeed. There are too many people, there's not enough food, at every level this country will not succeed. And you look at Bangladesh now, and it's not, obviously, there are a lot of problems, there are a lot of issues, there are big problems. However, every measure of human development has improved in Bangladesh. Every single measure. And fundamentally, because a lot of the SDGs are well on the way to being solved there, and particularly, it's about women's empowerment. It's about literacy for women. It's about their access to credit. It's about access to work. It's actually a classic example, really, of how industrialisation, unpleasant and nasty as it is, as Girish talked about, is also a very important route to be able to give women independent access to work, to their own lives, to credit, to later marriage, and so on. And just on the humanitarian side, I looked at some statistics very, very significant about, say, the lives lost in cyclones in Bangladesh. 1971, major cyclone, 300,000 people died. 1991, major cyclone, 135,000 people died. 2007, major cyclone, 3,000 people died. And I think there's been another one since that I haven't looked up, where it was in the hundreds. So, this is extraordinary. I mean, the world, in many ways, has been getting so much better than when I was growing up and learning about these things. International development then was a massive challenge. It still is, but we're talking about international development is very different kind of animal now to what it used to be. And sometimes some of the big challenges that Girish was talking about is about reaching the last groups, the people who are still the hardest to reach at the bottom of the pile. And I just urge you, if you want to get some good statistics and good data, is that there's a guy at Oxford University called Max Rosa, and he does a fantastic, he's done a fantastic thing of basically collating and showing databases in a series of charts and graphs. And he calls it Our World in Data. It's all free, it's all on the web. I'd urge you to go and look at it and just get a sense of just what progress has been made. And finally, just 2 minutes, because I think, so what could possibly go wrong? I think it would be more than ironic, it would be tragic if all of the SDGs were achieved by 2030, except number 13, the climate change one. Because as I mentioned earlier, we face, and Sam's slide was brilliant, because when you saw the trajectory, if we don't start bending that curve by 2020, effectively, which is 4 years from now, then we're not going to make it. And that is it's almost impossible. And what is, I think, extraordinary, and don't forget, as I said, we're not going to be able to head off all of the impacts of climate change. Sea level rise is going to keep rising. Changing rainfall patterns are already in place. They're already happening. They're going to continue. Increasing aridity in the semi-tropics, including large parts of the Mediterranean and the Middle East. That's going to continue. More extreme events, more heat waves, and that's going to affect people's ability to work outside. What we can do is, and it's crucial to do it, is slow down the pace of change. And that's going to make a big difference whether this all happens in 50 years or 150 years. But we can't slow that pace down unless we take action literally now in the next 10 years. And so the key to achieving SDG 13 in its new form, post-Paris, are the other two, I think, crucial SDGs. One is number 7, which is the SDG on energy, affordable and clean energy. Now this, unless we can crack now, and I say we, and I'm looking at you lot here, because I'm not an energy expert, you're a lot younger than me, you've got 30, 40 years to tackle this, I haven't. That one is absolutely crucial. You can't have development without energy. I've seen how small amounts of renewable energy in Zimbabwe make massive differences to people's lives in every aspect. But that's not what we're talking about. We're really talking about how do you fuel modern industrialised economies, massive consumers of energy, without using coal, without using gas, moving away from oil. I don't know how we're going to do that. And the other one that is absolutely key is number 12, because they go together. Responsible consumption and production. How are we going to achieve it says they're responsible, I've had sustainable consumption and production. And what does that mean? Because in both of these cases, a lot of the devil is in the detail of defining what these words mean. Affordable and clean energy, for example, there's a lot of talk about modern energy sources. Well, actually, modern energy sources, a lot of people interpret as fossil fuels, because that is, in a sense, modern for what many societies still want to exploit. How do we leapfrog into something which is truly modern, which is 21st century modern, which is moonshot modern? That's the big challenge. So unless we achieve these two, and they fit in with that, none of those things, or all of those things might be achieved, and we'll still lose them all. So I'll finish there. Thank you.